Now, look at the pair of you. The federal government is working to secure safe passage for 88 Australians stuck in Gaza. It's a little bit late now. I mean, why didn't you think that they would have got them out sooner? That just doesn't make any sense. Caroline, what do you think?
Yeah, it is a little concerning that we have now got, almost 3 weeks into this conflict, and we knew this wasn't going to be short. We knew that this wasn't going to be, a couple of days of Israeli, retaliation, I suppose, if you want to use the word, or defence is another word you could use, depends where you sit, in relation to Gaza. We knew that this was going to take some time. How this didn't get organised sooner, I don't know. I don't know the status of these Australian citizens. I don't know if some of them are living over there or some are visiting relatives, which, those of us with family members in other parts of the world do from time to time, but we need to get them out. How that hasn't quite been done yet, I'm not sure. You'll also notice that there has been a statement out from Penny Wong in relation to those Australians who are in Lebanon. And while there's 88 Australians in Gaza, there is an awful lot of Australians in Lebanon. So in the event that, God willing, it doesn't happen, that this escalates further, we could possibly end up with a bigger issue for Australia, trying to get Australians out of Lebanon.
Kristy, if you're advising Anthony Albanese on this, would you have advised him to make a diversion on that trip he's just done to the US, where he went and saw President Biden and dropped into Israel to see Benjamin Netanyahu, who is apparently not even taking our calls now?
Look, I have read reports that it has taken quite some time for the Office of the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister himself to make a call to the Israeli Prime Minister, whether that is yet to happen or not. But it remains that it did take quite some time. I would probably advise him that he could have stood very strong next to Joe Biden. Joe Biden needs credit for what he has done in terms of his commentary and his bravery and America's position against some resistance, political resistance as well, like we do have here in Australia. And I think there's a lot of Australians who are hoping, or who had hoped, that some of that bravery would have emboldened Anthony Albanese to stand with President Biden and echo those comments. Should he have gone to Israel? It was a possibility, given that he was already overseas. I think there's a strong position to say yes.
Caroline, you couldn't see, a John Howard or a Tony Abbott standing back and not involving themselves with a physical encounter with the Israelis in some way. As far as we know, unless we're not being told, Anthony Albanese's not inserted himself into this argument. He's left it all up to people like Tony Burke, who's upsetting people all around the country. Penny Wong's the foreign minister, obviously. But, the PM, he's doing a lot of travel. I think it's up to 8 or 9 overseas trips in the last couple of months. Surely a diversion into Israel might have been sensible, given, Joe Biden went there. The British Prime Minister's been there. The French Prime Minister's been there. We've got as much reason as anyone else to go there, haven't we?
We do. We absolutely do. And Israel is one of our allies. You do wonder what goes on below the surface in Labor Party politics. I suppose that there would, be something that would be acceptable to some parts of the Labor Party and probably punishable by death in other parts of the Labor Party. So I think Albo was a bit worried either way. I don't think that he could make anyone either internally or externally happy with that, despite the fact that Israel is one of our allies. But he has been doing an awful lot of travel overseas. We even had a week of Parliament cancelled because he was overseas. I don't know why he couldn't have just left Miles in charge of things while he was away. But you would think that, given that the nature of this conflict, and given the potential for it to ramp up, that this here would have been a priority. I know that it is, summit season, but you would think that this would be more important.
Kristy, I don't get a lot of confidence out of Anthony Albanese's handling of foreign affairs. I mean, I don't think he covers himself with glory. Obviously, he gets on with the US President Joe Biden, which is very important for us. So that relationship seems to be pretty solid. And he gets on pretty well with the British Prime Minister as well. But you don't get a sense that it's his strong suit, I don't believe.
No, it isn't his strong suit. He's not a foreign policy expert. He's not had any previous experience in foreign policy or international trade and investment. In fact, he's had no experience whatsoever outside of 12 months of working at the Commonwealth Bank before working in the Labor Party system. So he's right to leave it. And I know that people won't like me saying this necessarily. Penny Wong has been capable, diplomatic, and Tim Watts, the Assistant Minister for Foreign Affairs as well, has a significant international public policy background too. So there are some experienced Labor Party operatives in diplomacy and in foreign affairs.
Caroline, forgive me here. I'm not trying to be smart, but I know Anthony Albanese pretty well. You just don't think or don't get the impression that foreign relations is his strong suit. Am I being too tough?
No, well, it's not. I mean, he was Infrastructure Minister, and other than that, he has played internal politics, or he's had a crack at the Tories. Like, he's excellent at fighting Tories. His strong suit is fighting Tories. And that there is very limited domestically, and probably more so within New South Wales. I don't think that, what goes on in other places around the world, I'm not even sure it particularly interests him. So for him now to be able to speak confidently on this issue, particularly when there are so many moving parts and there is so much history, and you press one button over here but it impacts something over there, if you don't understand that landscape and you don't have a confidence in being able to talk about that landscape, well, then it shows really quickly.